Welcome to Curiosity, the podcast where science meets wonder. Join us as we explore the fascinating, the innovative, and the unexpected, from the secrets of the cosmos to the marvels of everyday life. Each episode takes you on a journey to uncover the knowledge and stories that fuel our endless quest for understanding. Let your curiosity guide you.
Echoes of Liberty, the transformative fury of the French Revolution. The French Revolution, which began in 1789, was one of the most significant and transformative events in world history. It marked the end of centuries of monarchical rule, the dismantling of feudal privileges, and the emergence of ideas that would shape the modern world. To fully understand the revolution, one must delve into its causes, which were deeply rooted in social, economic, and political tensions that had been simmering for decades, if not centuries. At its core, the revolution was a response to profound inequalities within French society, exacerbated by a crumbling economy and the widespread perception that the monarchy was incapable of addressing the kingdom's most pressing problems. France in the late 18th century was a society divided into three estates, or social orders. The first estate consisted of the clergy, who, despite their relatively small numbers, wielded enormous influence and wealth. They were exempt from many taxes and often controlled vast amounts of land. The second estate was made up of the nobility, who enjoyed privileges that insulated them from the economic hardships faced by the broader population. Like the clergy, they were largely exempt from taxes, and their aristocratic status granted them access to high-ranking positions in the military, government, and church. The third estate, comprising the vast majority of the population, included peasants, urban workers, and the burgeoning middle class, or bourgeoisie. This group bore the brunt of taxation and labor, yet they had little political power or social mobility. This rigid and inequitable system created deep resentment among the third estate, setting the stage for demands for reform. Economic conditions in France further fueled discontent. By the 1780s, the French economy was in a state of crisis. Years of lavish spending by the monarchy, combined with costly wars such as the 7 Years' War and the American Revolution, had drained the royal treasury. King Louis XVI and his advisors attempted to address the financial crisis through reforms, including imposing taxes on the nobility, but these efforts were met with fierce resistance. The situation worsened with a series of poor harvests, which led to food shortages and soaring bread prices. For the common people, bread was a staple of their diet, and its scarcity caused widespread suffering and anger. These economic hardships underscored the inability of the monarchy to manage the country's resources effectively, further eroding its legitimacy. As economic and social tensions mounted, so too did political dissatisfaction. The monarchy, long seen as an unassailable institution, began to face growing criticism. Enlightenment thinkers such as Voltaire, Rousseau, and Montesquieu had spent decades challenging the foundations of absolutist rule and advocating for ideas of equality, liberty, and the sovereignty of the people. Their writings inspired a generation of intellectuals and activists who saw the monarchy and the existing social order as obstacles to progress. The Enlightenment's emphasis on reason and individual rights offered a powerful ideological framework for those seeking change, and its ideas spread rapidly among the educated middle class. The Estates General, an assembly representing the three estates, became a focal point for this growing unrest. When Louis XVI convened the Estates General in 1789 to address the financial crisis, it was the first time the body had been called in over 175 years. The Third Estate saw this as an opportunity to demand greater representation and to challenge the privileges of the First and Second Estates. However, the proceedings quickly highlighted the deep divisions within French society. Disputes over voting procedures, with the Third Estate demanding votes by head rather than by estate, underscored the inequities of the system. Frustrated by the lack of progress, members of the Third Estate broke away to form the National Assembly, declaring themselves the true representatives of the French people. This act of defiance marked a turning point. The National Assembly's commitment to drafting a new constitution signaled a direct challenge to the authority of the king and the established order. It was not merely a political gesture but a declaration that sovereignty no longer resided solely with the monarch but with the people. The dramatic events that followed, including the famous tennis court oath, where members of the National Assembly vowed not to disband until they had created a constitution, further galvanized support for the revolutionary cause. These moments demonstrated that the old regime's grip on power was weakening, as the demand for change became impossible to ignore. As 1789 unfolded, the revolution gathered momentum, driven by both ideological fervor and the desperate circumstances of the French people. The storming of the Bastille on July 14, a symbolic act of resistance against tyranny, became an enduring emblem of the revolution. Meanwhile, uprisings in the countryside, known as the Great Fear, saw peasants revolt against their feudal lords, destroying records of their obligations and seizing control of land. These events highlighted the broad-based nature of the revolution, with people from all walks of life participating in the struggle for a new order. This is just the beginning of the complex and tumultuous story of the French Revolution, a narrative that would see the overthrow of the monarchy, the rise of radical political factions, and ultimately the reshaping of French society and governance. The French Revolution entered a new and more volatile phase as the events of 1789 gave way to escalating conflict and radical transformation. The initial unity that had characterized the early days of the revolution began to fracture under the weight of competing interests, diverging visions for France's future, and the sheer magnitude of the changes being enacted. The collapse of the old regime was not merely a political shift but a complete upheaval of social structures, traditions, and power dynamics. What began as a movement for reform soon became a struggle for survival, both for the revolutionary government and for the individuals swept up in the chaos. One of the most immediate consequences of the revolution was the abolition of feudal privileges. On the night of August 4, 1789, amidst the turmoil of the Great Fear, the National Assembly took the unprecedented step of dismantling the feudal system. Nobles and clergy, facing intense pressure, renounced their privileges, effectively ending centuries of legal inequality. This moment marked the beginning of a radical reorganization of French society, where the principles of liberty, equality, and fraternity were enshrined as guiding ideals. These principles were further articulated in the Declaration of the Rights of Man and of the Citizen, adopted later that month. Drawing heavily on Enlightenment ideas, the Declaration proclaimed the universal rights of individuals, including freedom of speech, equality before the law, and the sovereignty of the people. It became a cornerstone of revolutionary ideology and an enduring symbol of the struggle against oppression. Despite these advances, the revolution faced significant challenges. The economic crisis that had helped ignite the revolution persisted, with inflation, unemployment, and food shortages continuing to plague the population. The government's attempts to stabilize the economy often led to further unrest. One of the most contentious measures was the Civil Constitution of the Clergy, enacted in 1790. This law sought to bring the Catholic Church under state control by requiring clergy to swear allegiance to the revolutionary government. While it was intended to weaken the Church's influence and secure much-needed revenue, it deeply divided the population. Many devout Catholics viewed the measure as an attack on their faith, leading to widespread resistance in rural areas. This religious conflict would later fuel counter-revolutionary uprisings and deepen the polarization within French society. As internal tensions mounted, the revolution's leaders were also forced to contend with external threats. The French monarchy, though significantly weakened, still held symbolic importance, and many European monarchies viewed the revolution with alarm. The potential spread of revolutionary ideas posed a direct challenge to their own authority. In 1791, King Louis XVI attempted to flee France in the infamous flight to Varennes, hoping to rally counter-revolutionary forces. His capture and return to Paris dealt a severe blow to the monarchy's credibility, turning public opinion decisively against the king. This event, coupled with increasing calls for a republic, marked the beginning of the end for the Bourbon dynasty. In April 1792, France declared war on Austria, sparking a conflict that would last for over 2 decades. The Revolutionary Wars were born out of a combination of ideological fervor and practical necessity. Revolutionary leaders framed the war as a defense of liberty and a struggle against tyranny, but it was also a bid to unite the nation against a common enemy and to divert attention from internal discord. The early phases of the war were marked by chaos and defeats, as the French army, plagued by desertions and a lack of organization, struggled against seasoned European forces. However, these initial setbacks galvanized revolutionary zeal, leading to dramatic changes within the military and society. The war exacerbated the radicalization of the revolution. Faced with the dual threats of invasion and internal counter-revolution, revolutionary leaders adopted increasingly extreme measures to consolidate power and suppress dissent. The monarchy was formally abolished in September 1792, following the storming of the Tuileries Palace and the imprisonment of Louis XVI and his family. The National Convention, a new governing body, declared France a republic, signaling the definitive end of monarchical rule. The trial and execution of Louis XVI in January 1793 symbolized the revolution's break with the past and its commitment to a new political order. The execution of the king shocked Europe and intensified the coalition of monarchies arrayed against France. Internally, the revolution entered its most turbulent and violent phase, known as the Reign of Terror. Under the leadership of the radical Jacobins, led by figures such as Maximilien Robespierre, the revolutionary government implemented policies designed to root out counter-revolutionaries and secure the survival of the Republic. The Committee of Public Safety, established as an emergency body, wielded extraordinary powers, including the ability to arrest and execute individuals deemed enemies of the revolution. The guillotine became a grim symbol of this period, as thousands, including Queen Marie Antoinette, were executed on charges ranging from treason to conspiracy. The Reign of Terror was both a response to genuine threats and a manifestation of the revolution's ideological zeal. France was surrounded by hostile powers, while internal revolts, such as the Vendée uprising, posed significant challenges. The Jacobins justified their actions as necessary to preserve the gains of the revolution, but their methods alienated many former supporters. The radical policies of the government, including the suppression of religious practices and the imposition of price controls, further deepened divisions within French society. By 1794, the terror had reached its peak, with Robespierre's increasingly autocratic behavior sparking fears that he was becoming a dictator. As the revolution continued, it became clear that the initial ideals of 1789 had given way to a more complex and often contradictory reality. The struggle to reconcile liberty with the demands of war and survival created tensions that would define the next phase of the revolution. What had started as a movement for reform had transformed into a full-scale reimagining of society, with far-reaching consequences that would resonate long after the fall of the Jacobins. The unfolding drama of the revolution revealed the fragility of revolutionary ideals in the face of internal and external pressures, setting the stage for further upheaval and the eventual rise of a new political order. As the French Revolution entered its final stages, the echoes of its early ideals clashed with the harsh realities of governance, war, and social upheaval. By 1794, the Reign of Terror had begun to lose its grip on the nation. The Jacobins, who had risen to power as defenders of the revolution's radical principles, now faced growing opposition from both moderates and radicals. The intense paranoia and violence that characterized this period alienated even those who had once supported their cause. Maximilien Robespierre, the figurehead of the Jacobin regime, became increasingly isolated as former allies turned against him. In July 1794, Robespierre and his closest supporters were arrested and executed in a dramatic turn of events known as the Thermidorian reaction. This marked the end of the Reign of Terror and the beginning of a new phase of the revolution. The Thermidorian reaction was a period of relative stabilization, but it was also marked by continued political uncertainty and conflict. The National Convention, now under the control of more moderate factions, sought to dismantle the radical institutions established during the Terror. The Committee of Public Safety was stripped of its powers, and efforts were made to restore a semblance of normalcy to French society. However, the legacy of the revolution's earlier phases left deep scars. Political factions remained deeply divided, and many of the socio-economic issues that had fueled the revolution remained unresolved. In 1795, a new constitution was adopted, establishing the Directory as the governing body of France. This system, designed to prevent the concentration of power in the hands of a single individual or group, created a 5-member executive council supported by a bicameral legislature. While the Directory represented a shift toward more moderate governance, it was plagued by inefficiency, corruption, and a lack of popular support. The new regime struggled to address the ongoing economic crisis, manage the war with European powers, and maintain order in a deeply fractured society. Periodic uprisings, both from royalists seeking to restore the monarchy and from radical revolutionaries demanding a return to Jacobin policies, kept the government in a precarious position. Despite these challenges, the revolution's influence continued to spread beyond France's borders. The Revolutionary Wars, which had begun as a defensive effort, evolved into an expansive campaign that brought much of Europe under French control. Revolutionary armies, inspired by the ideals of liberty and equality, achieved remarkable successes on the battlefield, often against seemingly insurmountable odds. These victories not only secured France's borders but also spread revolutionary principles to neighboring territories, where old regimes were toppled and new republics were established. Amid this backdrop of war and political instability, a young and ambitious military commander began to rise to prominence. Napoleon Bonaparte, a general known for his tactical brilliance and decisive leadership, emerged as a key figure in the Revolutionary Wars. By 1799, dissatisfaction with the Directory had reached a breaking point, and Napoleon seized the opportunity to take power. In a coup d'état, he overthrew the Directory and established the consulate, with himself as first consul. This marked the end of the revolutionary government and the beginning of a new era in French history. Under Napoleon's leadership, France underwent significant transformation. Although the revolution's radical phase had ended, many of its principles were institutionalized during his rule. The Napoleonic Code, a comprehensive legal system established in 1804, enshrined many of the revolution's ideals, such as equality before the law and the abolition of feudal privileges. At the same time, Napoleon's autocratic tendencies signaled a departure from the democratic aspirations of the early revolution. By crowning himself Emperor of the French in 1804, Napoleon both embodied and betrayed the revolutionary legacy, blending Enlightenment ideals with imperial ambition. The French Revolution's impact was profound and far-reaching. Domestically, it dismantled the Ancien regime, ending centuries of monarchical rule and feudal privilege. The revolution established the principles of secular governance, equality before the law, and popular sovereignty, which became cornerstones of modern democratic societies. Its reforms in education, taxation, and governance laid the groundwork for a more centralized and efficient state. While the revolution's radical phase brought significant turmoil and violence, it also paved the way for a reimagining of French society that would endure long after the revolution itself had ended. Globally, the French Revolution inspired a wave of revolutionary movements and reforms. Its ideals resonated with oppressed peoples and reformers across the world, from Latin America to Eastern Europe. The revolution challenged the legitimacy of monarchies and aristocracies, offering a powerful vision of a society based on the principles of liberty, equality, and fraternity. While the revolution's excesses, such as the Reign of Terror, served as cautionary tales, its achievements demonstrated the transformative potential of collective action and political innovation. Yet the revolution also left a complex and contested legacy. Its early promises of universal equality were often undermined by the realities of governance and the compromises made in the pursuit of stability. The exclusion of women and marginalized groups from many of the revolution's gains highlighted the limitations of its vision. Moreover, the violent and tumultuous nature of the revolution raised enduring questions about the means by which change should be achieved and the balance between liberty and order. By the time Napoleon's reign came to an end in 1815, the revolutionary era had fundamentally reshaped France and the world. The ideas that had emerged during this period continued to influence political thought and action, inspiring both future revolutions and efforts to resist them. The French Revolution remains a pivotal chapter in human history, a testament to the power of ideas and the complexities of social and political change. Its legacy endures as both a symbol of human aspiration and a reminder of the challenges inherent in the pursuit of a more just and equitable society.